It was February 14th, 2026 at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so vivid and terrifying it felt like a warning from beyond drove me to the waterfall overlooked deep in the rainforest preserve outside my home. And there, surrounded by the thunderous roar of cascading water plunging into the mist-shrouded pool below, ancient ferns dripping with moisture that caught the moonlight like diamonds, and the dense canopy overhead blocking out all but fragments of starlight. Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood about the next 7 days. Keanu, they've been marked. Every single person who will see this message has been marked by my Father before the foundation of the world for this exact moment. And what I'm about to show you about the next 7 days will determine whether they step into their destiny or miss the greatest opportunity of their lives. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I need to tell you something before we go any further. If you're watching this right now, it's not an accident. The algorithm didn't bring you here. Your curiosity didn't bring you here. God himself orchestrated this divine appointment. And I'm about to share something with you that I've never shared publicly before, something so urgent, so time-sensitive that I actually hesitated to record this because I knew the moment I did, everything would change. But first, I need you to do something for me. I need you to leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I don't care how impossible your situation seems. I don't care how long you've been waiting. I don't care if you prayed 1,000 times and heard nothing but silence. Leave it in the comments, because what Jesus showed me in that rainforest at nearly 3 a.m. has everything to do with why some prayers get answered in the next 7 days and others don't. And I promise you, by the end of this message, you'll understand why. And if you're serious about your faith, if you're truly hungry for more of God and not just religious entertainment, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is only for true believers. It's only for people who are willing to hear hard truths, who are willing to be challenged, who are willing to let Jesus disrupt their comfortable Christianity, because what I'm about to share will do exactly that. Now, some of you know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen. That role has been the greatest honor of my life, but it's also been the greatest responsibility. When you spend years studying the words of Christ, when you meditate on his teachings day after day, when you try to embody his love and his truth in front of cameras and crews and millions of viewers, something happens to you. You become sensitized. You become attuned to his voice in ways you never expected. And sometimes he speaks to you in ways that terrify you because of the weight of what he's asking you to carry. This is one of those times. Let me take you back to that night, to that moment, to that place. I hadn't planned to go to the waterfall. I'd been in bed exhausted from a long day of filming when I fell into a sleep that wasn't really sleep. You know what I'm talking about. That state where you're not quite dreaming, but not quite awake, where the veil between the physical and spiritual realm becomes thin as gossamer. And in that state, I saw faces, thousands of them, millions of them, faces of people I'd never met, people from every nation and tribe and tongue. And they were all looking at something just beyond my field of vision, something that was coming, something that was almost here. And then I heard a voice, his voice, say just one word: go. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The clock read 2:33 a.m. I knew exactly where I needed to go. There's a place about 20 minutes from my house, a rainforest preserve that most people don't know about, with a waterfall that drops nearly 80 feet into a pool surrounded by rocks older than human civilization. I'd been there before to pray, to think, to escape the noise of the world. But I'd never been there at this hour, never in the middle of the night. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets, the darkness pressing against my windows like something alive. When I reached the trailhead, I grabbed my flashlight and started walking. The path was treacherous in the dark, roots reaching up to trip me, rocks slick with moss, the sounds of the nocturnal rainforest creating a symphony of chirps and calls and rustlings that would have unnerved me if I hadn't been so focused on getting to that overlook. The temperature had dropped to maybe 55 degrees, unusual for this time of year, and I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with moisture, that particular heaviness that comes from being deep in a rainforest where the canopy holds in the humidity like a greenhouse. Every breath I took tasted of earth and vegetation and something ancient, something primordial. It took me 15 minutes to reach the overlook, and when I did, I turned off my flashlight. The moon was 3/4 full, hanging in a gap in the canopy like a spotlight from heaven, and its light turned the waterfall into a cascade of liquid silver. The roar of the water was deafening, not painfully loud, but loud enough that it filled every space in my mind, drowning out every thought, every worry, every distraction. The mist rising from the pool below caught the moonlight and created an ethereal fog that swirled around the rocks and ferns like something out of a dream. I stood there on the wooden platform that serves as the overlook, my hands gripping the railing, and I prayed, Jesus, I'm here. What do you want to show me? And that's when everything changed. The temperature dropped suddenly. I mean suddenly, like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath came out in thick clouds. The sounds of the rainforest went completely silent, not gradually, instantly, as if someone had hit a mute button on creation itself. Even the waterfall seemed to quiet, though I could still see it cascading down. And then he was there. I didn't see him appear. He was just suddenly there, standing on the other side of the platform. His form somehow more solid than the trees around him, more real than the rocks beneath my feet. He was wearing simple robes, and his face, oh, his face. I've tried to portray that face for years on screen, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of it. The love in his eyes was so intense it was almost painful to look at. But there was something else there, too. Something I'd never seen in all my studies, all my prayers, all my meditations. Tears. He was weeping, not sobbing, not wailing, but tears were streaming down his face in the moonlight. And when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Jonathan, he said, and the sound of my name from his lips made my knees weak. Do you know why I brought you here to this place at this hour? I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I just shook my head. He stepped closer, and I could smell something like myrrh and honey, something that doesn't exist in our world but somehow should. I brought you here because what I'm about to show you needs to be witnessed in a place where my Father's creation still speaks clearly, where the noise of human civilization can't drown out the truth, where the power and majesty of what we created can remind you that we are not small, we are not distant, and we are not silent. He gestured to the waterfall, and as he did, the moonlight seemed to intensify, turning the cascade into something that looked like flowing light rather than water. In 7 days, he said, something is going to shift in the spiritual realm. A window is going to open that has been closed for a season, and everyone who sees the message you're going to share, everyone who has been marked by my Father, is going to have an opportunity that won't come again for a long, long time. What kind of opportunity? I managed to whisper. He turned to look at me fully, and the intensity of his gaze made me take a step back. The opportunity to step into the calling they've been running from. The opportunity to receive the breakthrough they've been begging for. The opportunity to see me move in their lives in ways they've only read about in Scripture. He paused, and another tear rolled down his cheek. But most of them won't take it. Most of them will miss it completely. Do you know why? I shook my head again. Because they don't understand what it means to be marked. He raised his hand, and suddenly the air between us shimmered like heat waves on asphalt, and I saw a vision. I saw a massive crowd of people, and above each person's head was a mark not visible to human eyes, but visible in the spiritual realm. Some marks glowed with brilliant light, others were dim, barely visible, and as I watched, I saw angels moving through the crowd, stopping at certain people, whispering in their ears, orchestrating circumstances, arranging divine appointments. Before you were born, Jesus said, his voice echoing strangely in the silent rainforest. My Father looked down through time and saw this moment. He saw you watching this message. He saw every struggle you've been through, every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried, and he marked you. He set you apart for such a time as this. The vision shifted, and I saw a calendar. The dates were highlighted, the next 7 days, starting from February 2nd, 2026. And over those 7 days, I saw supernatural activity like I'd never witnessed. I saw angels being dispatched. I saw demonic resistance being broken. I saw chains falling off people. I saw doors opening that had been locked for years. I saw healing, deliverance, provision, restoration, all happen in rapid succession like a divine domino effect. But here's what breaks my heart, Jesus said, and his voice cracked with emotion. Here's what makes me weep. Most of the people who have been marked for this moment won't recognize it. They'll be too busy, too distracted, too comfortable in their lukewarm faith. They'll see your message and think, that's nice, and then go right back to scrolling. They'll hear my voice calling them to something more, mistake it for their own thoughts. They'll feel the stirring in their spirit and dismiss it as emotion. He stepped closer to me, so close I could have reached out and touched him. I need you to tell them, Jonathan. I need you to warn them. The next 7 days are not ordinary days. They've been marked on heaven's calendar, and everyone who has been brought to this message has been marked as well. But marking isn't enough. They have to respond. They have to act. They have to step out in faith and obedience, or they'll miss what I'm about to do. What are you about to do? I asked, my voice barely audible over the returning sound of the waterfall. He smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. I'm about to answer prayers that people stopped praying because they lost hope. I'm about to open doors that people stopped knocking on because they got tired. I'm about to heal wounds that people accepted as permanent because they couldn't imagine me being that good. He turned back to the waterfall, and as he did, the water seemed to respond to his presence, the mist swirling in patterns that looked almost like words, almost like a language I couldn't quite read. But there's a condition, he said, his voice taking on a tone of authority that made the very air vibrate. They have to understand what they've been marked for, not just blessing, not just breakthrough, not just answered prayer. They've been marked for assignment. They've been marked for purpose. They've been marked to be my hands and feet in a world that's about to get much darker. The vision came back, but this time it was different. This time I saw the people with the glowing marks stepping into situations that looked impossible. I saw a woman walking into a hospital room where doctors had given up hope, and as she prayed, I saw the patient's body begin to heal. I saw a man standing in front of a business that was about to close, and as he declared God's promises, I saw the circumstances shift. I saw a teenager speaking to a friend who was contemplating suicide, and I saw demons flee at the authority in that teenager's voice. This is what they've been marked for, Jesus said. Not comfort, not ease, not a life where everything goes their way. They've been marked to be warriors, world changers, history makers, but they can step into that calling if they don't recognize this moment for what it is. I was trembling now, overwhelmed by the weight of what he was showing me. How do I make them understand, I asked. How do I help them see? He turned back to me, and his eyes were fierce with love and determination. You tell them the truth. You tell them that the next 7 days are a test, not a test of their perfection, but a test of their willingness. Will they be obedient when I whisper instructions? Will they step out in faith when I open doors? Will they pray when I prompt them? Will they speak when I give the M words? Will they give when I ask them to be generous? Will they forgive when I call them to release? The wind suddenly picked up, rushing through the rainforest canopy with a sound like a mighty rushing river, and the mist from the waterfall swirled around us both. And you tell them this, he continued, his voice rising above the wind. If they miss this window, if they ignore this marking, if they scroll past this message and go back to their comfortable, lukewarm existence, they won't lose their salvation, but they will lose their opportunity, and some opportunities only come once in a lifetime. He reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and the touch sent what felt like electricity through my entire body. Tomorrow night, come back here, same time. There's more I need to show you, more they need to understand. But for now, go and tell them what you've seen. Tell them they've been marked. Tell them the clock is ticking. Tell them the next 7 days will determine the next 7 years of their lives. And then just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. The sounds of the rainforest came rushing back. The chirping, the rustling, the thunderous roar of the waterfall. The temperature returned to normal. The moonlight seemed ordinary again, but I was not the same. I stood there on that platform, gripping the railing, tears streaming down my own face now, knowing that I'd just been entrusted with a message that could change lives or that could be ignored. Listen to me. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, you're marked. You need to understand that this isn't motivational speaking. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't me trying to get views or subscribers. This is a prophetic word from the throne room of heaven, delivered in a rainforest at 2:47 in the morning to someone who was terrified to share it because of how crazy it sounds. You've been marked for the next 7 days. And what you do with this message, what you do with this warning, what you do with this opportunity will echo into eternity. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that waterfall. Jesus told me to return, and he's going to show me more. He's going to reveal deeper truths about what's coming and what you need to do to prepare. And I'm going to share every word of it with you. But right now, in this moment, I need you to do something. I need you to stop and pray. I need you to ask Jesus if this word is for you. I need you to ask him what he's marking you for. And I need you to leave your prayer requests in the comments, because I believe with everything in me that the prayers left under this video in the next 7 days are going to be answered in supernatural ways. Don't ignore this. Don't scroll past. Don't dismiss this as just another YouTube video. You've been marked, and the next 7 days start now. It was February 3rd, 2026 at 3:15 a.m. when I found myself back on that same trail, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as I made my way to the waterfall overlook for the second night in a row. But this time, everything felt different. The rainforest seemed more alive, more aware, as if creation itself knew something significant was unfolding. The air was even colder than the night before. I checked the temperature before leaving my house, and it read 48 degrees, unseasonably cold for this region. My breath came out in thick plumes as I climbed over roots and navigated around moss-covered rocks. And with each step, I felt a growing sense of anticipation, mixed with something I can only describe as holy fear. I hadn't slept after the first encounter. How could I? I'd spent the entire day and a days replaying every word Jesus had spoken, every image he'd shown me, trying to process the weight of what I'd been asked to carry. I'd recorded the first part of this message, and already the comments were flooding in. Thousands of people sharing their prayer requests, their struggles, their desperate need for breakthrough. And as I read them, I kept hearing his words echoing in my mind. They've been marked, they've been marked, they've been marked. But I also kept hearing the warning. Most of them will miss it. That's what drove me back to the waterfall that second night. I needed to understand more. I needed to know how to help people recognize this moment, how to help them step into what God was doing. Because if what Jesus had shown me was true, if the next 7 days really were a divine window of opportunity, then I couldn't afford to be unclear. I couldn't afford to be vague. Lives were hanging in the balance. When I reached the overlook, I immediately noticed something different. The moon was in almost the exact same position as the night before, but the mist rising from the waterfall was thicker, denser, creating a wall of white vapor that obscured the pool below. The roar of the water seemed louder, more insistent, like it was trying to tell me something. And the smell, that earthy, ancient smell of the rainforest, was mixed with something else now, something that reminded me of incense, of the temple, of sacred aces. I set down my flashlight and gripped the railing of the platform, staring into the mist. Jesus, I said aloud, my voice barely carrying over the sound of the water. I'm here. I came back like you asked. Please show me more. Help me understand what these people need to know. The response was immediate. The temperature plummeted so fast that frost began forming on the railing under my hands. The sounds of the rainforest didn't just go silent. This time they reversed, like someone was playing a recording backward, and the mist from the waterfall began to glow with an inner light, not bright like the sun, but soft and golden like candlelight filtering through alabaster. He stepped out of the mist, not from behind it, not around it, out of it as if the mist itself had taken form and become flesh. And this time his appearance was different. He looked the same face, the same robes, the same eyes full of impossible love. but there was an intensity to his presence that hadn't been there the night before. He looked like a king preparing for battle. He looked like a bridegroom waiting for his bride. He looked like a father about to do something drastic to save his children. "You came back," he said, and there was approval in his voice that made my heart swell. "You told me to," I replied, my voice shaking. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Many people hear my voice, Jonathan. Few obey it. That's the first thing I need you to understand about these next 7 days. That's the first thing everyone watching this needs to understand. Hearing is not enough. Recognition is not enough. Even belief is not enough. What I'm looking for, what separates those who will step into their marking from those who will miss it, is obedience." He moved to the edge of the platform, looking down into the glowing mist, and gestured for me to join him. I did, my legs feeling weak, my whole body trembling from cold and awe and fear. "Look down there," he said, pointing into the mist. "Tell me what you see." I looked, squinting through the golden glow, trying to see the pool below. But instead of water, I saw something else. I saw people, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all standing in the mist, all looking up toward where we stood, and they were calling out, their voices somehow audible despite the roar of the waterfall. "Help me, Jesus. I need a miracle. Please, I can't do this anymore. Where are you? Why won't you answer?" The desperation in their voices broke something inside me. I felt tears streaming down my face as I listened to their cries, their pleas, their raw and honest pain. "These are the prayers I hear every second of every day," Jesus said, his own voice thick with emotion. "These are my children crying out for help, for hope, for breakthrough. And do you know what breaks my heart more than their suffering?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "It's that I've already answered most of these prayers. I've already dispatched angels. I've already moved circumstances. I've already opened doors. But they can't see it because they're looking in the wrong direction." He waved his hand, and the scene in the mist changed. Now I could see the same people, but from a different angle. And behind each one of them, I saw open doors, glowing, obvious, impossible to miss open doors. But every single person had their back to their door. They were all facing the wrong way, staring at closed doors, pounding on locked doors, weeping over doors that were never meant to open. "This is the second thing you need to tell them," Jesus said, his voice taking on that tone of authority that made the air vibrate. "The next 7 days are not about me finally deciding to answer their prayers. I've already decided. I decided before the foundation of the world. The next 7 days are about them finally turning around and seeing what I've already prepared." He turned to face me directly, and his eyes were blazing now, not with anger, but with passionate intensity. "Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand how crucial this is?" I think so," I stammered. "You're saying the breakthrough is already there, but people are missing it because they're focused on the wrong things." "Exactly." His voice rose above the waterfall, and the mist swirled in response to his words. "They're praying for me to open doors I've already opened. They're begging me to make a way when I've already made a way. They're asking me to move when I've already moved. And meanwhile, the enemy is doing everything in his power to keep them distracted, to keep them looking in the wrong direction, to keep them from turning around and seeing what's right behind them." The wind picked up suddenly, rushing through the rainforest canopy with such force that leaves and small branches began falling around us. But neither Jesus nor I moved. We stood there on that platform, surrounded by the chaos of wind and mist and falling debris, and he continued speaking. "In the next 7 days, I'm going to be speaking to everyone who's been marked. I'm going to be giving them specific instructions. Turn here, look there, call this person, go to that place, give this amount, forgive that offense, release this dream, pick up that assignment." And the ones who obey, the ones who actually do what I tell them to do, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs them something, those are the ones who are going to turn around and see their open doors. He paused, and the wind died down as suddenly as it had started. In the silence that followed, I could hear water dripping from the leaves above us, each drop hitting the platform with a sound like a ticking clock. "But the ones who hesitate," he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "the ones who hear my voice but second guess it, who feel my prompting but rationalize it away, who sense my leading but decide to wait for a more convenient time, they're going to miss it. They're going to stay facing the wrong direction. And when these 7 days are over, when this window